SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Want to cut your heating costs this season? With a highly efficient York heating and air conditioning system, you can save up to 50% in energy costs while enjoying tax credits and TVA energy rebates as much as $3,000. Your local York dealer. Visit harbonair.com to schedule a free evaluation of your system.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
With C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
It looks like it's a return to the CHOP Summer of Love with Mayor Jenny Durkin. It reminds you of that, does it not?
A little bit, yeah.
Peaceful protest. Oh, my gosh. The Democrats continue to lean into this nonsense.
And the talking heads in mainstream media that carry their water.
Golly. Do they not understand? Well, it's a dumb question to even preface it with that, expecting rationale and logic to be applied in taking their positions. I don't think what's going on there is supported by the vast majority of Americans and Angelenos who are directly impacted, including those who would fashion themselves as Democrats. Now, old John Fetterman, he spoke up again.
Yeah, it's amazing. He always has the courage to say these things on social media and to antagonize the lefty activist reporters that like to troll him in Washington, but he never seems to have the courage to actually do anything when it comes to a vote.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's going to stick with his party in that regard, won't cross the line. I mean, as you like to say, it's almost as if he just wants attention. You think that's in play here? Oh, my gosh. And speaking of someone who covets attention, what about Jasmine Crockett, the Congresswoman?
I haven't seen her latest.
First they illegally deport citizens, then they unleash ICE to terrorize communities. Now they've got the National Guard in L.A. to silence protesters. This ain't about law and order. This is what authoritarianism looks like. She never disappoints when it comes to the patently false rhetoric and fear-mongering.
Well, she had to get out and say something because Maxine Waters has been showing her rear.
Oh, my gosh.
She can't be one-upped in the dumbest congressman race.
And I always, you're right, I always enjoy perusing the comments and on these posts from these left-wing loons such as the Congresswoman. Here's one. Trump is the definition of a tyrannical government. Are you kidding? Can you even imagine if this were Obama? The righties would be screaming, this is the reason that the founding fathers gave us the Second Amendment, and would be calling on we the people to resist and defend.
I'm so glad they said Obama's name. Shall we take a trip back in time?
If you're a criminal, you'll be deported. If you plan to enter the U.S. illegally, your chances of getting caught and sent back just went up. The actions I'm taking are not only lawful, They're the kinds of actions taken by every single Republican president and every single Democratic president for the past half century.
You don't say there, Barack.
He deported more people than any president in modern history, since probably Eisenhower, maybe even more than him. And all these loony leftist liberals with bleeding hearts and no brains didn't seem to have a problem with it then. They certainly weren't burning down L.A. for it.
No, exactly. So the script is flipped. Somehow they've leaned so heavily into this idea that we should not have borders, let anybody in, provided it empowers them. It's what they covet the most, is political power. So if open borders provides that to them, enhances that, they're all down. They're for it. Then you got this nut Terry Moran over there at ABC, senior national correspondent for ABC News.
I feel like that used to mean something to somebody.
It's true.
But now it's just a waste of ink on a business card?
So he, on social media, on X, Twitter, we call it here, of course, he described Stephen Miller, of course, he's the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, as, quote, richly endowed with a capacity for hatred. You can see this just by looking at him, because you can see that his hatreds, what is that? Are his spiritual, I can't even say it, spiritual nourishment. How about that? He eats his hate, he goes on to say. So, but that's...
I'm sure that sounded profound when he was 3 martinis deep.
J.D. Vance, the vice president, he then published a tweet that rebuked Terry Moran, describing Moran's tweet as, quote, absolutely vile smear. So here's the deal. If you want to secure the border and uphold this country's sovereignty, prioritize the needs of American citizens, you're considered a hater. That's how they describe hate. It's so remindful of 2020, when everything under the sun was considered racist and a product of European white colonization and white supremacy, such as, have to remind you guys of this every now and then, is striving towards success and hard work, working as a team, can-do attitude. All that was defined by these shakedown artist consulting groups that were shaking their finger essentially in corporate America, telling them, you're all racist, right? Because of this promotion of teamwork and can-do attitude and striving towards success and delayed gratification. That's racist. It's offensive. Well, what they're saying here is, wait, you don't want people to be here that have no business here, that have not legally immigrated or are not legal, or not documented properly, been granted a work visa, something to that effect. I mean, there are ways to gain access and residency in the country, but it's a privilege, not a right. And at the drop of a hat, we ought to be able to say, okay, you're out of here. Period. End of story. And that's all they were doing. Now, the president made this clear. This was his plan back on the campaign trail. He said mass deportations. Honestly, they should be happy, because he stopped way short of mass deportations. But rooting out the worst of the worst, who doesn't support that?
I support sending anybody that's here illegally home.
I think a lot of people do. I'm with you. I hear you.
And all the idiots in L.A. are not doing anything to change my mind.
No.
And all the idiots supporting them are doing even more to change my mind, or to impress upon me the need to get rid of every stinking person here that's here illegally.
Terry Moran said, the thing about Stephen Miller is not that he is the brains behind Trumpism. Yes, he is one of the people who conceptualizes the impulses of the Trumpist movement, and translates them into policy. But that's not what's interesting about Miller. It's not brains, it's bile. Miller is a man who is richly endowed with a capacity for hatred. He's a world-class hater because he wants to expel people that are here illegally. So what's next? He's going to tell us that if we want to convict and sentence someone who committed the most heinous of crimes, murder, homicide, to some sort of punishment, that you hate them? Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable.
It's because all of these idiots are led by emotion instead of logic.
Man. Well, Moran has been suspended. Yesterday, we talked about this. I did a Newsmax deal. I actually said, they asked me, the host did, what do you think they ought to do with him? I said, well, I think they were right to suspend him, but I think they ought to terminate him, honestly. There's no place as a correspondent to even go out with those kinds of opinions. Shouldn't you have to check that a little bit when you're at that level in the news? Unless you're an opinion person. Coming right back.
Return to sender. Return to sender.
From the City Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
They're rolling. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
Awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays on the C Spire text line. That's 601-879-4395. Again, we're in the Element Wealth studio. The Democrats want the chaos, says CC in Senatobia. They just can't come right out and say that. Tim in Oxford says they were peaceful until Trump got involved, tongue-in-cheek. All this is manufactured to prevent Republicans in the Senate from making the big, beautiful bill fiscally responsible. That's, of course, Thomas and Greenwood.
Tighten up the tinfoil hat there, Thomas.
That's absurd.
It's
Thomas.
getting a little loose.
Absurd. Mo says, senior correspondent now means next in line to be terminated for saying something liable. Good point. Democrats have more wishy-washy and agitation than the best washer, laugh out loud on the 601 on the C Spire text line. Think about the trash politicians that have that have come from California, Newsom, Pelosi, Kamala Harris, just to name three. One American has more common sense than all of them combined. They get lots of votes, though. That's the thing about it is that's what the voters of California want. They've always leaned in that direction, but there's no doubt it's been ramped up somewhat. So the Democrats say they promised to fight Trump, continue to do so, and there's a gubernatorial race in New Jersey, and those candidates are kind of making a living. Now, is that the state that's got a candidate who's running ads that are not in English? You seen that one?
No, that's for the mayor of New York City.
Okay. My apologies. I knew it was somewhere in the area, New York City. Of course, there are 8 million people in New York City. That's right. And so this individual is running at, is it Arabic? Is some Arabic dialect? I can't remember, but I've actually watched the ad.
It was Arabic.
It's this kind of makes you think that we're headed in the same direction, at least New York, as London.
I think it was Hindi.
I think you're right. You're right. Numerous cities, if you look at the mayors across the UK, None of them are like native Anglicans, right? It's weird. But that's because they embraced the crazy open border stuff. And now England, France don't look like England and France. You've heard this. I haven't been. My wife has. That's one of the first things she reported is, yeah, you don't really think you're in England or France. They've been overwhelmed, causing problems.
Yeah, you see live streamers go to the, I just went blank, Eiffel Tower in Paris.
Yeah.
And walk around it, and it looks like you might as well be in Calcutta.
Unbelievable.
Just street markets and bazaars. And it's like,
jeez.
I thought France was cafes and berets.
Yeah. More traditional French culture, you mean, that they're known for? Such as cafes, clothing, fashion, food, wine. I missed something? That's kind of what you think of when you think of France.
Bread.
True. Bread, yep. Yeah. Doesn't seem to be the case anymore. And I don't want to see that happen here. Now, we're a melting pot, and that's a good thing. Legal melting pot. Right. And we've got a multicultural society. But there are a lot of things that are common within the set of American values. That's what we've got to protect and preserve. I don't want our culture destroyed by these wackos that have different ideas about that, such as this constant castigation of our roots. I'm sorry. It was Europeans who crossed the ocean, landed on the shores of the country, and dispersed and founded it. That's not saying we don't have immigrants in the early days that came into the country, legally, by the way. And so we've got these pockets of different diverse cultures, which is fantastic. It's great. But there's still a set of common American traditions and values that we've all got to stand for and uphold. Otherwise,
and if you look at the origins of, say, Chinatown in Southern California, or Chinatown in New York City, or Little Italy in New York City, or any of these other pockets of demographics or nationalism outside of American nationalism, they always seem to start when there's this influx of immigration to a point where the immigrants can not assimilate because they're getting here too fast.
Unbelievable.
Every single time.
Well,
the latest, it seems, is Minnesota, Little Somalia.
How about that? What about the rep? This came up, by the way, in my Newsmax interview, and I'll have to admit, until they sent me a little link to it, I wasn't aware of it. There's a rep. I think I sent you some sound, maybe. There's a rep, House rep, in the state of Minnesota, who at the podium, on the floor. Is it short enough? Can we play it? Here we go.
Because his mother had died. My father, as the one processing the paperwork, put my grandmother down as his mother. And so I am illegal in this country. My parents are illegal here in this country.
This is a rep in the State House in Minnesota, acknowledging, admitting, recognizing, I am illegal. And she's trying to make a point here, how great illegals are. Look at me. I'm a member of the Minnesota State House, and I'm illegal. That just blew me away. But she had no hesitation in telling the world that on the stage. That's gone viral. I mean, we talked about it on national TV yesterday. Incredible.
And I'm fairly certain she's going to go back and scrub all of her social media where she was bragging about her and her family voting together for the first time. But if you're an illegal alien and you vote in an election, I'm fairly certain that's against the law, too.
Yeah, exactly. You committed felony. A measure introduced by Representative Gabe Evans in the United States House of Representatives. He is a Republican from the Rocky Mountain state of Colorado. It passed by 280 to 113. This measure, by the way, denounces, he's from Colorado, it denounces the attack in Boulder not so long ago. And there are 113 Democrats who voted against the measure denouncing this attack. Man, oh man.
And the only excuse they gave was they didn't like the fact that he was called illegal.
Oh, okay. But he was, I believe, right?
Yeah.
They said they had
because they were more worried about a murderer's feelings, they couldn't bring themselves to condemn setting someone on fire.
Unbelievable. Just incredible.
That's what I mean when I say emotion-led.
You're right. So they also said they had issues with the language in the measure, including a line expressing gratitude to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, for protecting the homeland. That, in quotes, by the way, protecting the homeland, gratitude. Those are the words. That's the language included in this measure. They didn't like that. So, help me out here. This is insane.
We just heard from the Lord and Savior of the woke religion, Barack Hussein Obama himself, talking about how if you're here illegally, you're going to go.
So you're a member of the United States House of Representatives, and you vote against expressing gratitude to a U.S. federal law enforcement agency. What happened to that? Put your hand on the Bible and raise your right hand, where you swear to uphold the Constitution and our law? What happened to that? That's incredible. And they're serving in Congress.
Never meant it in the first place.
That's exactly right. So they had issues with it. And the other thing they got mad about was that the phrase, the slogan, Free Palestine, was defined as an anti-Semitic slogan. And that actually got stripped out to appease them. And they still voted against it. If it's not anti-Semitic, what in the wide world of sports is it? Who says that? Who says that doesn't hate Jews? That I define as anti-Semitic. Hating Jews, anti-Semitic, same thing. We're stepping aside for a break. When we come back, it's Jim Leggette. He's a lecturer of economics at Mississippi State University.
For all your glass on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now Jim Leggette, a lecturer of economics at Mississippi State University. Hey, Jim, good to see you again.
Hey, good to see you, Gerard. Kind of fun to go talk about some economics, listen to you guys talk about L.A. You think all rationality's left the planet.
Man,
but at least
crazy.
With economics, I think there still is some.
Yeah, of course, the other point we made yesterday is you well know, without law and order, you can't have prosperity. You can't have a functioning society. Doesn't work. And that's...
But if you look at even the most avid libertarian says something to the effect, if you can't do national defense and internal security, nothing else matters.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the last time you and I spoke, we were dealing with the tariff situation. That's still in play. Yeah. But honestly, it's hard to track. You've probably seen some of the timelines since the president took office on all the actions regarding tariffs. They're on, they're off, they're back on, they're reduced, they're discounted, they're extending the deadlines. It's really kind of hard to keep up with.
Yeah, because I can make a case that tariffs are a bad idea. I can make a case they're a good idea. But I think more importantly, and that's what you're getting to, if you're a business person or consumer, if you don't know what the rules are, you can't plan. And we've all heard the stories of the merchant who's getting ready for Christmas and is importing stuff, and they don't know whether they're going to make any money or not. And so I think that's probably far more important. It's probably I love political cartoons, and there's one I saw recently. Kind of the guy outlined whatever this was, and I thought that was instructive. And I guess if you're sitting at the Fed tomorrow afternoon, that they're probably worried about the cloud of uncertainty because the court's going to ultimately rule whether he has that authority. I can make a reasonable case it's an overreach.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And, of course, the courts are still working through that, sorting that out. We'll see where that goes. But right now, of course, Jim, all eyes are focused on the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That literally is the title of the legislation, nearly 1,100 pages, a slew of provisions related to taxes and reforms and mandatory programs and kind of a spending framework for the future. Here's the question. I always laugh about the notion that economists have to have two hands because they always give you some analytical viewpoint, and then they come around and say, but on the other hand, there's no consensus here. There's no consensus.
Yeah, and our training doesn't make, to your point, we're trained to think that way. But I guess I'm going to have kind of ambivalent about it. I think that the extending the tax cuts is the most important part. And I think reforms of various agencies are good. But anything that big, 1,100 pages or so, there's some stuff in there that nobody knows what it is. And, of course, knowing how legislation works is Rhino gets his thing, Gerard gets his thing, I get my thing, and no one knows what it is. That's just the nature of the beast, because I used to be totally disgusted by that. I guess I still kind of am. And then you go look at how the process works. It's kind of you should be surprised if it would work any other way.
Yeah, exactly. It's just when you've got reporters and journalists and media, they just sort of latch on to whoever's opinion that they want to see develop and become a reality, and they run with that one. But there's a slew of other opinions from credible people, from smart people on both sides of the aisle that come out with different takes.
And I don't know about you, but I certainly wouldn't want to read an 1,100-page appropriation bill. And even if I could read it, how long do I have to study it to actually understand what it is?
Well, there's so many references.
And it's nuances.
Yeah. And you got to have the whole tax code just about in front of you because there's so many references and citations elsewhere. You can't just read that bill unto itself and really have a deep understanding. I have gone to the White House website and read their analysis, which, of course, is very, very much promoting the bill. And 50 things, they say, that the bill would do, all of which were positive. Yeah. One in particular, get your take on this. The president had a press conference to announce it yesterday, and that's these so-called Trump accounts. $1,000 would be deposited in an index fund for every child born attached to that child in this country. Families, employers, and other third parties could contribute up to $5,000 a year to the plan, and it would become available to the account. It would become available to the child at the age of 18. What do you think about this plan?
Well, part of me just doesn't like spending. I don't put that aside to do my on the other hand part. But on the other hand, I get the logic. Okay, you get $1,000, and if you just ignored it, in 18 years, it's enough to help a kid say, go get a car, pay for college. And I assume it's some tax-deferred vehicle. Folks can dump some money in that, and it could really help a young person get started. We all talk. I'll give an example. We all talk about, the burden of college debt that puts on everybody. But, if you come hit college with $50,000 in the bank, that gives you kind of a head start. I think maybe you were the same way.
Yeah.
I was blessed to go to college at a time where my last tuition check was $500. But more importantly, I had parents who were in a position to pay for that as long as I did what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And of course, looking backwards, you recognize what a gift that was.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, they say grad school's on me, but that's okay.
Yeah, I understand. What my bigger concern,
but I got money for that, so that's okay.
When do we ever say, hey, we don't have the money, we can't afford that? Yeah. When does that ever come into play?
Well, that was kind of my first reaction is I like the program, but do we have the money? What are we at, 30+ trillion and counting for our debt? And probably the only reason people still lend us money is because we're U.S.
Yeah, you're right. They know they're going to get paid back.
And that's very important, plus our role in the international currency system. And then what I guess one of the things that gives me pause, 30 years ago, we were afraid that Japan was going to eat our lunch. Yeah. They kind of hit a wall. Last time I looked, their debt was 250+% of GDP. And one analyst I really like, what's his name? John Waldman describes it as the bug in search of the windshield. And then I think, but the real answer is they'll muddle through. But his real point was, with that kind of debt burden, they are no longer the economic engine they were 30 years ago.
Well, I think that's absolutely true.
And his real point is, that when does that happen to U.S.? Because as you know, businesses, a little bit of debt's a good thing because you can fund stuff. At some point, you're juggling things just to figure out how to go pay the debt, and that's money you'd rather be dumping into your business so you can go to the next level.
Yeah. So we've got economists that are saying that the bill will not add to deficits, and we've got certainly most of those are in the White House's orbit. And they're going to present it in a positive light. And then you got those who are really sounding the alarm and warning, including Senator Ron Johnson in the U.S. Senate from Wisconsin. He's really expressing serious concerns and, bringing all the charts and the graphs to the floor to make his point that this bill needs to go further in terms of cutting spending. The White House is providing a very rosy outlook with respect to GDP growth and how that will generate a lot of revenue for the government. What do you think about that? $4 trillion, they're saying, $400 billion a year, essentially.
Yeah. There is a forecast out there that says GDP growth is 3.8. That'd be wonderful, by the way. We're at 0.2 now. Yeah. What do they call it? Rosy scenario. Of course, the White House, you're going to present whatever the best outcome is. But I think what drives those answers is not necessarily the spending part. If the economy is booming at 3 to 4%, you can handle whatever extra spending it is. If you're stuck at 0.2 or worse, you're going to wish it only added 400 trillion or 400 billion or whatever it is. Right. So I think it really depends. Maybe the right way to think of all this is if the economy grows, it'll be okay. If it doesn't, you're just piling on.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, as always, we appreciate your insights. Appreciate you joining us this morning. We'll talk to you again soon. Jim Leggette, Lecturer of Economics, Mississippi State University. Thanks, Jim.
And I enjoyed talking a little rationality.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're stepping aside, coming right back.
Take care, gentlemen.
Thank man.
For a limited time, get on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate Jim Leggette for his coming on the program, talk about the economic situation. There's a lot of moving parts to all that right now. Now, we've talked about the rescission legislation that the White House was scheduled to tender to the United States House. That has occurred. Actually, they have sort of drafted it, but haven't sent it over yet. Or did they already do it? I could be wrong. I could be behind on that. I think maybe the House does have it in their possession now. And so this is really just a way for the Congress to cancel funds previously appropriated but not yet spent. And much of what the Doge folks exposed that was rather shocking, honestly, to a lot of people, mainly some of the crazy spending from the USAID foreign aid program, that got a lot of people's attention. And some of that spending, or a fair amount of it, already appropriated but not yet dispersed, is what this rescission package would, in fact, rescind. It amounts to $9.4 billion, just a bit over $9 billion. And it also includes canceling future funding, additional spending for the public broadcasting systems, which include NPR and PBS. Now, this is what the House is working with. It remains to be seen as to whether or not it will pass as is in that form. It's pretty simple, though. It really just says, hey, here's $9 billion of spending that was previously appropriated that we don't think is a good idea, so let's just cancel that spending. Save some money. Makes sense. So the budget package itself, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, it includes provisions that would reduce non-defense discretionary spending by $150 billion a year, by the way. Now, why am I pointing that out? Because most of what the Doge folks found that's crazy, that needs to go away, is in fact discretionary appropriated spending in the non-defense column. This little $9 billion tranche is a part of that. It would not be appropriated, this sort of stuff, in the future. So you got two things going on. You got canceling spending previously appropriated. That's $9 billion. And then you got the budget package that would set the framework for future appropriations. That includes $150 billion per year of cuts to things like USAID and NPR and PBS and just a wide range of other crazy unnecessary spending on the discretionary side. It's a framework for it. So by passing the framework, they're essentially agreeing, yeah, that's the way we're going to appropriate, but it doesn't mandate appropriations. The reforms to the mandatory programs, mainly in view there, in focus, Medicaid and SNAP. Some changes there. Little bit in Medicare, little to nothing in Social Security. That would be codified into law. That's a different situation. But this rescission package, now in the House, waiting for action by the House, that will be interesting to see where that goes. I heard this morning an interview with U.S. House Rep Mike Lawler. Is he from, help me out, Ryan, is he from Florida or New York? But what he said was, hey, if they make any changes, so I think he's New York. He's one of the proponents of the bumping up.
Yeah, he's from Hudson Valley.
Yeah, he big time wants to see the SALT cap go up. He's one of the more outspoken members of the House on that matter. He said if the Senate touches that, he will not support the bill. He voted for it before it was transmitted over to the Senate, but he said if the Senate adjusts the SALT cap downward, he's a nay. Heard him say that this morning.
Well, you know why, right?
Why's that?
Because he's trying to run for governor of New York.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that would be popular statewide because they have outrageously high state and local taxes. And they want to deduct more off of their federal income tax.
It's almost like none of the names you hear coming out of the halls of Congress in D.C. in the headlines of mainstream media actually give a rat's rear end about doing the right thing.
It's a shame, but you're absolutely right. Well, that's where he is. You know, I understand Mr. Trump's plan with the $1,000 baby investment. I'm worried about the details and how that gets codified. We're coming right back after Fox News Super Talk News. Journal.com, Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Appreciate you joining us. At 12:05 today, it's Joey Deason, Executive Director of the Madison County Economic Development Authority. We'll get an update from Makita and the big AWS project that is underway right now in Madison County, not far from where we're sitting. So under this new baby investment account, some are calling it Trump accounts. Some are calling it MAGA accounts. To qualify, a child must be a U.S.-born citizen, born within the next 4 years, to at least one parent with a Social Security number. The money could be withdrawn starting at age 18. So would be available to families of all income levels. They have to be born between December 31, 24. That's in the past, of course, and before January 1, 2029. That's consistent with lots of the provisions of the bill that all expire at the end of 28. The tips, the overtime, the additional personal standard deduction for seniors. Some of the immediate expensing provisions. There are lots of the provisions that to make the math work so the bill could pass with a simple majority in the Senate, they have an expiration date on them, and it's at the end of 28. Nonprofits, companies, employers can all make contributions to these accounts. No limit can donate within the five of any particular company or organizations or entity within the $5,000 annual contribution limit. So several companies have already stepped up and announced. Michael Dell, he was there yesterday. The president made this announcement with many corporate leaders present in the White House. Uber, Dell, Goldman Sachs have all committed to setting aside billions to invest in the accounts of company employees who become new parents. Interesting. Uber CEO said it's not just an account, it's a launch pad. It puts the unstoppable engine of compounding to work for our kids, the magic of compound interest. Children enrolled in the program can start withdrawing half of the value accumulated in the account between their 18th and 25th birthdays. You pay a penalty for early withdrawal. No allowance for emergency use of the funds like you can certain circumstances with a 401k plan. Funds withdrawn for anything other than qualified expenses, including paying for higher education, buying a residence, or starting a business, will be taxed, by the way. So this is an interesting concept. This is something the president talked about on the campaign trail. It's a little different than just paying somebody cash money to have a child. That's what Hungary did to try to address their extremely low birth rate, which is a problem that many futurists and business leaders have pointed out, including Elon Musk. He's issued a pretty stark warning. He says, if we don't improve the birth rate in this country, we're going to run out of people. Literally said that. So this, I think, is an effort to improve the birth rate. Little incentive. Honestly, I'm not sure how many people who are maybe on the fence about having a child, and if they're concerned about future expenses associated with a child, going to college and so forth, maybe this tilts the needle in the favor of having a child. You're shaking your head. You don't believe so.
I don't see it having much of an impact, if at all.
I don't either. And so, okay, the secondary purpose would be just to provide some head start financially. Something a lot of parents wouldn't do. I'm going to go stick $1,000, right, in an account. Heck, at that point in your life, not many have that kind of money that are having children. Especially when you consider, Rhino, the fact, we shared this on the program, that almost half the babies born in this country are born to mothers on Medicaid. If they're on Medicaid, that means their income is extremely low, less than 150, 200% of the federal poverty level. It's pretty hard to make ends meet with that sort of income, $25,000 to $32,000, $33,000 a year. And a child, that's a tall order financially. So I doubt they would have $1,000 sitting around to go put in an account to tuck away for the future of the child in those circumstances. So this would do that. To me, the question is this something the government ought to be doing?
I've got no problem with the government opening an account that parents, businesses, nonprofits could put money into. But if you say this worked like a charm and all of a sudden we had the second baby boom, I don't really think we've got the money to put $1,000 in a few million accounts.
I agree. I'm concerned about that. I mean, we're still running $2 trillion deficits. We don't have money for squat. So,
I mean, if you got to put something in there just to open the account, I'm sure the libertarians would hate me for saying this, but I could maybe see $50, $100. $200 is like the statistical cutoff of if a child knows they have $200 set aside for their furthering education, they're X number of percentage points more likely to get that education. Start there. Not $1,000.
I could live with that. And, you know, my question for all these corporate leaders that are now signing up for this and announcing they're going to participate, how come they're not doing that now? They could go put $1,000 in an account.
I can see why they wouldn't do it now because, all right, cool, you hire somebody for 10 years, they work for you, they got a kid, in the second year they work for you, you've set up this account for them, and now they want to move to a different job. Well, do you go through all the same hassle of that to move their IRA or their 401k or whatever else with them? You're just adding to the paperwork and the manpower needed to let somebody go.
Right.
Whereas if it's a government account, it's just like another checkbox on the HR form.
Amanda from Pike County says, MMAA, make more Americans again. And I'm for that, but it disturbs me that nearly half the babies born in this country are paid for by the taxpayers. The birth in the prenatal care and postnatal care now is paid for by taxpayers. I mean, Medicaid is free. The subscriber The enrollee has no costs in the deal. You're paying the providers. That reminds me of something. You've heard talk a lot about these deserts, these healthcare deserts in our state, areas of the state that have very little coverage, especially with respect to certain specialty practices, specifically OBGYN in the sort of Delta counties and even across the interstate into Grenada County and so forth. You've probably heard reports, man, there's not but one, right? I played golf with him Sunday, the one OBGYN. Great guy, nice guy. Not in practice for terribly long, but yeah, he said he's the only one in 7 counties. That's what he told me this weekend.
Yeah, but what's the population of those 7 counties?
It's not a lot, but it's a long drive. I think it's the bigger issue for a lot of people to get to where he is. I mean, I'm not sure if that's sufficient coverage or not, having one, in terms of providing OBGYN medical services. I don't know. He's the only one in the 7 counties, though. It's hard for me to understand how big a problem, if it is.
But if the 7 counties have such small population that you have to scrape 7 counties together to have a viable business, don't really think you're going to get more people to move into that area to start that same business.
Completely agree. And that's a big problem in our state in general. We're sort of concentrated and then we're dispersed. Yeah, and it's not just in Mississippi that's a problem, but it's a problem in other parts of the country as well. It seems to be more pronounced here because usually when you have that population sparsity, it's also an impoverished area, which makes it even a bigger problem. This is interesting. The MAGA accounts, Trump accounts, I'm not exactly sure how it will end up being styled in the bill. But in the meantime, the Senate is debating this One Big Beautiful Bill Act. We'll see where all that lands. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Just as I thought it was going all right, I found out I'm wrong when I thought it was right. It's always the same, it's just a shame, that's all. I could say day and you'd say night. Tell me it's black when I know that it's white. Always the same, it's just a shame, and that's all.
Back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Gary in the Berg says the riots are all about getting the Hispanic vote in the midterms. WikiLeaks revealed the Democrat email stating that they vote on a motion. Well, newsflash, WikiLeaks, everybody votes on a motion. That's been the way that's worked forever. That's just human nature.
The funny thing about the leftists in the Democrat Party that are hoping this will somehow engender them some goodwill with the Hispanic population, they've got blinders on. Because if you look at the Hispanic population of the United States that are here legally, that can legally vote in our elections, they don't want the illegals here either.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I don't know what their strategy is here. I don't know that they have a dang strategy, honestly, except
somebody does, because they're showing up with pallets of projectiles and gas masks.
Well, that's true, but I mean, as far as the Democrat Party is concerned, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, they're like a lost ball in tall grass that can't find their butt with both hands.
I'm not exactly sure what their ideas are and what their policy positions are and what they stand for and what they oppose. They seem to be deeply fractured, and that's unusual because it's usually the Republicans where you see disunity, but it seems to be more prevalent within the Democrat Party. Right now, the test for the Republicans, of course, is the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that now, having passed the House, sent over to the Senate taking it up. Just not sure what the outcome is going to be on that. Let's see here. I can't really read what somebody sent here on the C Spire text line. What does that say, Rhino? Facts matter. Mississippi student achievement versus top 10 school choice state. So this is somebody, I'm assuming, I can't hardly read it. It's an anti-school choice person.
Well, that kind of hurts their credibility or their or our willingness to believe they actually understand what they're saying if they don't understand how to properly share a screenshot.
Yeah.
If you have a hard time with technology, maybe trying to use technology to prove your point, just think about it a little bit.
So this, I'm going to make this point again, and I get pretty fired up about this. It's just, it seems to be missed. The key purpose. It's freedom. Why don't they get that? I don't care what stupid government statistics say. I have zero confidence in them anyhow. I don't know how they measure this stuff. Zero confidence in it. I've talked before about the Bureau of Labor Statistics, who calculates the labor force participation rate. I challenge you to find one person who's ever been called by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because that's how they conduct the survey. That's how they calculate the figure. So you can send us all this stuff about how great Mississippi's doing, and I applaud that. That's fantastic. This is good news from an education perspective, K through 12, and contrast that to states which have embraced and implemented robust school choice. But here's the point again. It's about giving choice. If it's so great and we pass school choice, what are you worried about? Nobody's going to choose to leave the public schools because they're so great. So it's about letting people choose. The government is not responsible for preventing people from being stupid. If you're in a situation where your child is thriving in the school, you'd be stupid to change it. But it's not government's responsibility to prevent you from making that stupid choice. And every dang time the government says, as Ronald Reagan famously said, you should be terrorized when the government says, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And that's what I feel like this point is this person's attempting to make. The government wants to prevent you from making that mistake of taking your child out of these fantastic public schools and choosing an alternative setting. Man, what am I missing here? Help me out.
The only thing missing seems to be the application of logic by those that are against school choice.
You might as well just send me a text that says, I oppose freedom. Send that. I want more government control. I want more government dictate. I want more government in your life. I want government inserted into your household. That's what you're saying when you oppose school choice. It's exactly what you're saying. I want government to protect government. Man, and I apologize for raising my voice, for getting rather emotional about this, fighting this battle now for 11 years. And I just feel like the point's being missed. This is about giving people a choice. All I can think about, Rhino, is Bernie Sanders when he was aghast at the amount of choices of deodorant. Remember that famous clip? Why do we need all this deodorant? So what do you want, Bernie? The government to dictate? The answer to that, of course, is yes. That's exactly what he wants. I, Bernie Sanders, am better equipped to run the $30 trillion economy than is the market. And that's the same thing we're talking about here. that government is better equipped to make these choices for families, parents, students than they are. Honestly, what you're saying is that our education system failed because they can't make the right choice. You're essentially indicting the very institution you're protecting. Man, oh man. I do not disagree with your point, and it is a valid point. But this is on the C Spire text line from someone else. But I do not think you understand the real day-to-day operations and politics that are involved in public schools and moving from one school to the next. Au contraire, I promise I do. I promise that I understand it. You just made even a greater point for why we need to implement this. It should be free of politics and protectionism. I do understand it. That's what I want to fix with law, so that we don't have all this politics and protectionism inserted into the process. We empower students and parents, not systems and politicians. That's what this is all about.
But then the third assistant to the secretary for the superintendent might actually have to do something instead of taking a 4-hour lunch break.
Oh, I see. And draining PERS on top of that, right? No, I promise. I appreciate the comment. I really do on the 662. I get it. That's why that I fight in favor of tearing down those protections. You made the point. That's fantastic. I agree. CC in Senatobia, liberals fight against the very freedoms that will allow them to scream and cry like they do. They're so smart. And I hear you, CC. The problem is it's Republicans in our state that you would expect would embrace the concept of more freedom. That's our target. That's our hindrance, our obstruction. It's not the liberals. I get that. Yeah, they're going to, of course, always opt in favor of more government. Of course. I mean, that's consistent with their philosophy, with their party's principles, honestly. I don't expect it from conservative Republicans who should, I believe, uphold the idea of more freedom. It's as simple as that. So, and I want to be clear, I think the strides we've made in public education in Mississippi are laudable. It's fantastic. And I applaud its teachers, its administrators, its parents, its students. To a great extent, you have to credit our government for years ago adopting educational policies that I think also contributed greatly to this. That being said, parents, consumers can figure that out. The market will always win. Freedom and freedom of choice always wins. It self-corrects. You're either producing or the market punishes you. That's the way it ought to work, whether you're selling a product or you're selling education services. Simple as that. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.
Back with you on these in the Element Wealth studio on the C Spire text line. This individual came back and said, I don't mean the politics is in the political world politics, and I didn't think that's what you meant, by the way. I thought you were talking about just inside company sort of politics is the way to describe it, or organizational politics. It's not necessarily a company. In this case, we're talking about school districts and schools. This is too complicated in my mind to explain on text, but you do not, I don't think you understand what I'm talking about. Well, I guess maybe not. I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but here's all I can say. If we enacted law that precluded a school district from blocking the transfer of a student to another school, I'm not sure how any of that would be in play anymore. They would be breaking the law if they invoke politics or any other reason to deny that they couldn't do it. I mean, just couldn't do it. So, and the way it works is the student would apply to have their money transferred to the school of their choice through this open enrollment concept. We had a bill, 1435, introduced by Jansen Owen, the representative in the Mississippi House this past year, passed the House and did not even get taken up in committee in the Senate. Senator Dennis DeBar, the Education Committee chairman in the Senate. And it's exactly what it would have done. It would have prevented any transferring school, the transferor as it is referred to in the bill. The transferee would be the receiving school, the target school. Neither could prevent. The transferee could, the target school, based on capacity. And they would be required under the legislation to provide their capacity data before the school year so that there's no sort of post-manipulation of it is the idea there. And that would be a legitimate reason to deny a transfer. We just don't have any room for you. I get it. But the bill does have some language that would prevent abuse of that and manipulation of that. That would be politics, so to speak. Well, we want that one, but not that one kind of deal.
Or are they saying that a child would face repercussions if they tried to transfer and couldn't?
That's possible, yeah. I get that.
Which kind of brings up the point of, what is more free, allowing a parent of a child to choose which school to send their child to, or having some nameless, faceless wannabe educator that's not really in the classroom? They're more like pushing papers behind a desk in central office determining where that child goes.
Yeah.
Or even worse, where they happen to live determining whether or not they can go to a good school or bad school.
Yeah. And the idea is you're not tethered to a school based on your address. That's the whole idea there. And that the money associated with a particular student's, a specific student's education, it could be transferred to the setting of their choice, could be directed by the family to the setting of their choice. That's the idea behind school choice, of course.
And again, I bring up the point that seemingly nobody wants to talk about, is this is not going to be millions upon millions of students moving school to school to school to school to school every single school year.
Agree. And that's been proven in the other states that have adopted it. It's that have adopted robust school choice. It's there's the fear-mongering is unfounded, honestly. And I'm happy to say that the benefits, perhaps, they get a little exaggerated as well. But the point is, it doesn't matter. It's about giving choice. Let it work out. Let it work itself out through market-based decisions. Simple as that. Ben on the C Spire text line from Madison says, as you've stated before, race absolutely plays a role in the debate regarding school choice expansion. I don't necessarily believe all those who oppose school choice are racist, but oftentimes the only point they seem to make revolves around the concern of who may transfer to a particular district. No doubt about it. I'll say it again. I think race is at the core of why we can't get it done in Mississippi. Why can they get it done in other states? And I submit that's because the difference in the composition of our population by race is so small. We're separated by a smaller margin than in many other states. In fact, by the lowest margin of all the states. I mean, that's just mathematical fact, and it does complicate things. There's no doubt about it. If we set up everything in our day-to-day lives the way the screwed-up government school system sets up, where my kids can go to school I would not even be able to leave my ward or district to shop or attend church services. They mandate our schools, choice or lack thereof, so I think we should have a choice there. Too, because my school system is the pits. Therefore, I have to pay a fortune to send my kids to private school. That's on the C Spire text line. Get it. Understand. It's pretty simple. Republicans prefer corporations in charge. Democrats prefer government in charge. This, too, on the C Spire text line. One believes that the market should make the decision, and the other believes elections should. Huh? Not sure I'm following that one. I don't know what you mean by corporations in charge. Crosby in Inverness says we need John Wayne and not George Clooney. Oh, yeah. So, it's certainly, I'm an HR director, and I have done the BLS surveys for employers. Painful. Interesting. I don't know that those surveys are the ones they use to calculate the labor force participation rate, because you don't have access to people who aren't working as an HR director. What the BLS website says is we call people on the telephone. That is taken directly from their site. Individuals. And that's how they calculate it. So, I mean, I ran a company for 33 years, had an HR department. We never had any of that stuff, so I'm not even sure what that is. But I don't know anybody that's ever been called directly as the way the BLS describes they calculate this information. I don't know anybody. I don't know how they do it. I'm skeptical as to the accuracy and validity of it. And that wouldn't surprise, given the way government functions, that they just throw a number on a paper. That's believable, isn't it? Certainly,
sadly, yes.
It's certainly, in light of what the Doge folks have figured out, a whole bunch of people just collecting paychecks, doing nothing, honestly. Nothing of value, and your rather regular point of it's not my problem. I think that's pervasive as well. Big problem. Well, I'm going to keep fighting for this. I believe in education freedom. I believe in empowering parents and students, not systems. By the way, the president just sent this out on Truth Social. Incidentally, the much more difficult, time-consuming, and stringent federal permitting process. He's going all over this. He's having a meeting right now in the White House. And I saw that Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, I saw on the television in the studio, was flanking him, as was Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins, Kristi Noem. And what they're trying to do is simplify the permitting process to promote exploration of oil and gas and produce more supply to bring the price down. So that's what's going on up there right now. He's also, is the president, describing Gavin Newsom as grossly incompetent. And I think that's a fairly accurate description of the governor of California. It's just amazing to me that they're not interested in solving this problem. President says he's just tweeting this or posting it, I should say, on his Truth Social. We stopped a disaster in L.A. by deploying, 700 Marines today, I think. They're saying we didn't need that. Our police department had it covered and handled.
Except they told the police department to stand down.
Exactly. And that's why, I want to be clear. I'm not being critical of the police department. I think the L.A. Police Department wants to do the right thing and wants to uphold their sworn duty and protect the city and the citizens. But I agree. I think people above their head are telling them to stand down. And that's causing a problem. Now, that's not the first time that's happened, of course, with the Democrats. It's just amazing to me that this remarkable American city is ablaze like this. It is so remindful of the summer of 2020, the BLM riots across the country that the Democrats leaned heavily into. I've been using school choice for years. Just use a friend's address to send my kid where I want them to go, says Sistrunk Mobile Detailing. I'm not sure I'd let people know that. And I would say that falls on the shoulders of the school that you attend for not doing a better job in vetting your address, because you got to have right, exactly. You got to have something that
sometimes it's beneficial, I guess.
Shows your address, but also has something that identifies you. If you're using your friend's address, then they're not asking for any documents that validate your address for your child. We're coming right back.
Polyupa, Mississippi.
We'll do it live
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
A Monday warrior, mean strike. Today's Tom Sawyer, mean pride.
We're back with you in the C-Spire, pardon me, the Element Well studio on the C-Spire text line. It's 2 times today I've done that. The Sister Up Mobile Detailing, who told us that he's been using Choice for years by sending his kid to a school based on using the address of a neighbor, says, yeah, people have been doing it for decades. Happens more times than you guys know, I guess. No, I know what's going on. What I'm saying is that's not following the rules. The schools are required to verify residents in the district. I believe, I hadn't checked in a while, it requires 2 forms of documented evidence, such as a utility bill, something with your name on it and your address. So if you're just putting down your address and you're just using a bogus one or one that belongs to someone other than you, I mean, you're obviously not telling the truth. That's the first thing I would say. I don't know that that's necessarily fraud. I don't know if we have that defined as legal fraud. But more importantly, that is gross negligence on behalf of the school and the district for not following the rules that you've got to show that with some documented evidence. Utility bill's the common one because virtually everybody has that. It's got your name on it, your address. That's where the service is going. You have it in your possession. It matches your identification. That's pretty strong verification. That's where you live. But if you're just asked to write down an address here on a piece of paper, that's definitely that's not my problem. And you just write down anything, and they say, okay, good, that's in the district. Well, that's really reprehensible that process is taking place, and maybe it's right. They're just looking the other way, don't want to deal with the contention. That could likely be exactly what you're saying. I do know that in Madison
Why else
County,
do you think there are so many former and current educators that are so adamant against school choice?
You're asking me that, or
yeah? In relation to this conversation, if they can't be bothered to verify where somebody actually lives,
gotcha.
Then the possibility of having to file the paperwork for a student transferring is just putting too much on their plate.
Oh, no doubt about it. That the process itself requires a little effort. Yeah, little elbow grease. Agree. Don't want to mess with that. I get you. I agree. And that may be exactly what's going on here with respect to, okay, just put your address down here, you're in. I mean, that's, and maybe, Rhino.
But we're supposed to believe that these people working in the central offices of all these school districts actually give a rat's rear end about our kids.
Yeah, agree. So on the C-Spire text line, he says, requires a water bill or utility bill, electricity bill. So are you presenting your neighbor's bill? That's my question. You bringing your neighbor's bill and presenting that, just falsifying that and saying, yeah, this is me, even though it's not you? And they're accepting that? That's hard to believe. Because the student has a different name than the bill. And I guess it's possible. He said, no, I'm paying his bill. I would call it fraud. It happens all the time in Rankin County. You see Hinds County cars in the car rider lines. So you're saying Rankin County's not checking proper address? Because I can tell you, up the street here at Ridgeland High School, where my daughter taught for several years, that was a problem. You know, when the school opened every year, people would show up to enroll, and they'd be asked to present their utility bills, and they wouldn't be in the district. They'd bring Jackson utility bills. Often they come up just to enroll, and then they're told, well, we need some proof you live in the district. Okay, I'll go back and get that. What do you need? Utility bill. They come back. Well, you live in Jackson. You don't qualify. You can't enter. So I'm not saying there are all kinds of people who figure out a way to subvert the system, but why don't we just make it legal? I mean, saying that we don't need to do this because you can just falsify records and enter the school because you got it's not my problem people running the process. I'm sorry, I can't accept that. I'm anal retentive like this. I want things to be done right, by the book. So let's just pass law that says it doesn't matter where you live. We don't have to worry about that anymore. That's the simple solution here. Rather than going to all this trouble to
But won't you think of the superintendent's second secretary's third assistant?
Wow, this person says at South Panola we had to give a deed of trust. Well, what if you live in an apartment or you rent? You don't have a deed of trust. And if you have a mortgage, you don't have a deed. Your mortgage company does. I don't know, but you got to help me out with that one. Instead of school choice, our lawmakers should try to bring Mississippi up from being dead last in education. The fact that this is even something that's needed is the problem. That's what we're trying to do. School choice would... oh, man. I'm exhausted going through it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again for 11 years. We're coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News with Joey Deason, Executive Director, Madison County Economic Development Authority.
Your meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays, live from the Element Wealth Studio. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of the program. It's our pleasure to welcome now Joey Deason, Executive Director of the Madison County Economic Development Authority. Hey, Joey, good to see you.
Hey, Gerard. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
You bet. So give us an update from Makita, riding around the mega site there just south of Canton and the other site in Ridgeland around Highland Colony Parkway and 55, 220, kind of sandwiched in between those routes. Lots of activity going on, lots of folks on site building these gigantic Amazon Web Services facilities. What's the latest?
Well, let's go back and revisit the original project that was announced in January of last year. What came out of the legislation and what came out in the press release was obviously $10 billion and 1,000 jobs, paying more than $80,000 a year. And it was 2 hyperscale data center campuses.
Right.
And at that point, we read a lot of the blogs. We look at a lot of this information as well. And there were a lot of comments that, there's no way that 2 data centers are going to be $10 billion. So it's sort of not a secret anymore, because if you fly in and out of Jackson, it's pretty easy to identify. At the end of the day, if you're flying in from Atlanta or Dallas or Washington and you fly over Madison County, you can see to the north and to the west of Nissan that it's not a single data center. You can see that there's 5 data centers that have already been constructed, of which 2 of the 5 are going operational probably within the next 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
If you fly to the south and you look at the Costas property, you can see that there are also 2 additional data centers there that have gone vertical, but you can see a pad for another 2. And if you look at the pad here at Jan 100, you can see, I'm not going to tell you the number, but there are plans to add quite a few multiple more data centers on that location as well. So it's not just 2 data centers, it's 2 hyperscale data center campuses, of which the $10 billion, I'm going to tell your listeners, and some of these listeners may have heard this before, it was all a lie. Okay? It's way more than $10 billion. We were being very conservative. And I'm not going to tell you what the true number is, but let's just say it's way north of $10 billion.
Yeah. And the company just announced a project, similar project, you're familiar with this, in North Carolina, same price tag, $10 billion. That seems to be kind of the standard way they announce these projects.
Well, Gerard, and yesterday, I don't know if you saw it or not, in Pennsylvania, they announced a $20 billion project.
Yeah.
So they have a strategy with what they present and how they present it. At the end of the day, we continue to work with AWS even as we speak. I think when I did one of the original interviews with Paul Gallo, I was at 10,000 emails at that point. Well, in the last year, I've done another 5,000 emails with AWS. So we're at 15,000 emails that we have corresponded back and forth. So, at some point in the near future, we hope to be in that PA range as well. But that remains to be seen at this point.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting, of course. The really shocking thing about this to me is just doing a drive through the mega site there, south of Canton, close to our Makita building. The number of workers on site, what's that up to now?
Well, if you're looking at both campuses today, that number of construction workers is right at 4,000 employees. Okay, the majority of them are going to be at Jan 100 because those buildings are a little bit further along.
Yeah.
But we expect when Jan 200, which is the property at the end of Highland Colony Parkway and West County line, goes active, we'll be between probably 5,000 to 6,000 at a total construction worker employment. And you want to talk about a busy intersection? At lunch, trying to get out with 3,000 Amazon.com employees and 4,000 construction workers. It's a busy location.
Yeah. And the good news for the area is that they're staying in hotels, they're renting property, they're eating in the restaurants, spending money. A lot of these workers, of course, are Mississippians, some from the area, some from other parts of the state, but obviously they've had to bring in a lot of workers, these subcontractors that are working on the project from out of state. And I actually ran into a couple up there. Got out of my car, I was taking pictures not so long ago and just introduced myself to somebody. I think we're going to have some people make Mississippi their permanent home.
Look, I can give you numerous examples of individuals that have already moved here, that have already purchased homes, everywhere from Virginia to Alabama to Georgia to Oklahoma to Seattle, Washington. So it continues to grow. We actually have 3 general contractors that are actually doing the construction. We've got Gray, which is out of Kentucky. We've got Haskell, which is out of Florida, and we've got Yates, which did a joint venture with Turner. And Yates, obviously, is a Mississippi homegrown company that also is building some of the buildings here at Jan 100. But currently, we've got over about 30 Mississippi-based companies that are actively engaged and employed and have workers out at both sites today. And that includes professional services, construction services, petroleum services, you name it.
Yeah, it truly is incredible. So it's my understanding, Joey, that there's so many workers that there's no place for them to park. They're having to park off-site and be bussed into the site to work.
Well, I'll tell your listeners and I'll tell you, Gerard. As a matter of fact, AWS is looking at purchasing another 400 acres adjacent to Jan 100 just to have locations so that the workers can have a location to park.
That's incredible.
So, this is the gift that just keeps giving. It is going to grow. It's going to get larger. So I think they realize that as well, and that's why they're looking at expanding the current footprint.
Wow.
But I mean, if you go to the hotels, if you go to the restaurants, and I'm not just talking just in Canton or Gluckstadt or Madison or Ridgeland, I'm talking all over. I went to Martin's at Livingston 2 times last week, and all I could see was AWS shirts everywhere.
That's awesome. Yeah, so they definitely have made themselves at home in Mississippi, and you've seen it. They speak very highly about the state of Mississippi. Makita and you in particular have been acclaimed in some of their communications by the folks that run AWS. And really, having worked with you and been involved, in a board capacity, I feel like it was just being responsive, just accommodating their needs and answering questions and being expedient and being able to fast track everything that they had to get answers to.
Gerard, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, number one, Mississippi has a very business-friendly climate. Madison has a very business-friendly climate.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to continue to do. I want to continue to be responsive, not only at the local level, but the state level as well, because at the end of the day, there are other opportunities, I think, with AWS, because they become our corporate citizen at this point. And they know what they're dealing with when they come to the local level. They know what they come with when they're dealing with the state level. So therefore, it's a known fact and a known partner. And we're going to continue to grow the relationship.
And lots of Mississippi businesses, which is important, I think, Joey, to point this out and highlight this, have benefited from their investment. I mean, they're buying a lot of stuff from a lot of Mississippi businesses, from the people doing the site prep, which is a massive amount, to the road construction. Even the people providing the porta potties are seeing their business just explode.
Well, I've got a list here, and I'll just read off a few of them. Wages Civil, Headwaters, Site Support Group, Jones Walker, Wagner Engineering, Birdsong Construction, Maloof Construction, Hemp Hill Construction, Shackleford, Burns Cooley Dennis, and it continues, and it goes on and on and on. All of these Mississippi companies they're getting a piece and a place at the table so that they can enjoy some of this investment as well.
Yeah. And I think there's more coming as well. You guys keep doing a great job. All these Mississippi companies do a great job. They're pleased with that, and they say, yeah, we want to do more. I think that's coming. Joey, good to see you, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Gerard, thank you anytime. Take care.
Yeah.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Back with you in the Element Wealth studio. We appreciate you joining us. Thanks to Joey Deason, Executive Director, Madison County Economic Development Authority, for joining MidDays. It's really fascinating to watch the project unfold with Joey's leadership there as the ED of Makita. And it's just what can happen when you get the private and the public sector working together. The Madison County Board of Supervisors, of course, state government, the governor's office, Mississippi Development Authority, the legislature. But more importantly, Joey, the Madison County Economic Development Authority, the team there, our board, which is fantastic, just working together. Going back on this deal to 2019, early 2019 is when the discussions began, and it's materialized into this massive investment. He won't tell you how much he thinks it's going to be, but I'll share my thoughts on what I think it's going to be. It's looking like this phase one, which consists of multiple buildings across 2 sites, as you heard Joey discuss in Madison County. I think we're looking at upwards of $25 to $30 billion investment for phase one. This project that's already been agreed to. But I also think there's a good chance that, consistent with what they've done elsewhere, talking about Amazon Web Services, that there's a good chance they'll continue to tack on more buildings in these the data center campuses, the 2 campuses. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see that happen. And I can tell you, I've heard directly from them their praise for Madison County, the state of Mississippi, of just the process, that they even remarked they wished other states employed similar processes, that we really have become the gold standard in that respect. And this is something I think we can capitalize on and leverage and address our most critical needs in the state of Mississippi. And that, honestly, is poverty. It's the number one problem in the state. Everything stems from that. And if we can continue to bolster our economy and create more opportunity and produce more jobs with higher incomes, higher pay, that addresses that problem, and that in turn addresses all the other problems. But it's got to start with economic prosperity, and we're well on our way to new heights in that regard, and I think that's being driven by these massive investments being made. Big companies such as Amazon, SDI, and others that have said, yeah, Mississippi is a good place to make an investment and to operate. And to a great extent, that's because we have business-friendly policies that are conducive to attracting investment and expansion of businesses. And that's exactly what's going on here. It's exciting. Exciting day for Mississippi, and the momentum is certainly on an upward trajectory. My hope is that we continue to thrive in this area, and the demand for the fantastic graduates our colleges are producing increases, so that these graduates make the decision to stay home, start and enjoy a career in Mississippi, make investments, start families, and really leverage all this investment we're making on our colleges and universities that are world-class and are producing graduates who are second to none, but we don't benefit as much as we would if they stayed inside the state, made their professional careers here. That's when we really will see Mississippi again achieve new heights from an economics perspective, and that will affect our education systems, our infrastructure, our health care, our overall quality of life will improve and increase and be enhanced when we see those incomes, household incomes, rise as a result of economic expansion. We're well on our way to that. These projects are huge in achieving those goals and targets. On the C Spire text line, back to the school choice discussion. School choice happens all the time for big athletes, big-time athletes. Well, all I can say is that there are rules in the state of Mississippi, and if you don't live in the district, you're not allowed to go to the school. I'm not saying those rules don't get broken. I'm simply advocating for signing into effect law that makes that irrelevant. You can go where you want. That's all I'm saying. That's pretty simple proposition, and it's not like we're blazing new trails here. This is being done in 15 other states right now. Leslie in Grenada says schools don't care about where a child comes from because they get paid for butts in the seat. I would say that depends on the school, Leslie. I can tell you that in my home county of Madison, they're extremely restrictive and diligent about that. honestly don't want outsiders. They don't want people that come from other district addresses, because legally they're not supposed to do that. You're only supposed to admit students that live in your district. So I know from experience they are diligent in verifying and affirming address to ensure that you are eligible to attend a school in that district. I can't speak for all the other districts. I know crazy stuff happens, and it could be that you've got some districts that have very low enrollment. They want more money, and maybe they look the other way. It's not my problem, as Rhino says, so that they can do what you're saying, Leslie. They can attend, and that money then would flow to them. However, they're not getting the local money associated with the student, because that is based on property and sales taxes, that are transactions that occur inside municipality or inside a school district. In the case of property taxes, most of that does go to the school district that services the address. And if they live in a different district but attend a school in another particular district, the local portion of that, the ad valorem taxes, do not follow that child to the other district. Only the state portion, which is based on enrollment there. So the person who says, by the way, instead of school choice, we should try to bring Mississippi up from being dead last. We had a couple of people that pointed out, and they're right. We're not dead last. We've made tremendous strides. We've got national attention in that regard. But anytime this comes up from opponents of school choice, of course they're always talking about, you got to send them more money. That's always what they want. More money, more money, more money. If you just send us more money, we'd fix it. And we keep sending more money, and it ain't getting any better. So I disagree with that notion that the solution is more money. Now, it's something I actually agree with on Thomas. I think there are opportunities to consolidate school districts in the state. I'm not sure if one per county is the right plan. It's certainly something to be explored, but we got too many at 142.
Maybe not the first step or even the plan, but the end goal.
Could be. Sure. I'm not
saying
set
it as a goal and work towards it.
At a minimum, we could look at some really small districts. I mean, you've got some, as you know, that we got a district that has 2 schools in it, and we call that a district. We have all the overhead associated with having a district at the back office, and we don't really need that when we got 2 schools, it would appear. So there's a lot of work that can be done in that area, and there's been some reports done that show that we have an outsized amount of administrative costs. I would argue that's because we have too many districts relative to the student population, which, by the way, has declined. In fact, the recent budget passed by the legislature decreased the amount because it's based on head count. So the amount that goes to K through 12 schools is down relative to last year because the number of students enrolled is down. So we got fewer students to teach, get less money. The problem is you got a very high fixed overhead, whether you got 1 student or 1,000. That's what needs to be addressed. And that, I think, could be effectively addressed with exploring the possibility of some district consolidation where you've got those fixed costs spread across more students, more districts, more schools, more teachers. You cannot go by tags. A lot of folks move but never change their tag to the county they live in. Yeah, and I agree. Again, I'm interested in the schools following the rules, which require the student, the family, to produce documentation that shows, it proves they live in the district. And that's got to be something that's got their name on it with the address, some legitimate form of proof, such as a utility bill or a bank statement or something to that effect. I'm not sure what all credentials the districts accept to prove residency, but that's pretty simple. Water is much cheaper than private school.
You pay somebody's water bill is cheaper than paying to go to private school.
I got you. Rankin County School checks addresses with utility bill and deed or lease agreement. Yeah, I think that's fairly common. Lori and Goche says, I can't speak to Rankin County now, but I know when my kids were in school in Rankin County, they scanned our retinas before accepting our children. I do know a lady that allowed someone to have guardianship over her daughter. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook Pain.
It was huge. You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome to Earth, third rock from the sun. She walks into Smokies, one hip at a time, like a broken field runner.
Okay, so on the C-Spire text line, the Sistrunk Mobile Detailing says, yeah, I'm paying the bill of my neighbor, essentially, that's in a different district or a friend. And so the school's using that. Well, that sounds to me like you've got a water system that has an ancient billing system. It's supposed to have the billing address and the physical address to which the water service is being provided. I don't think I've seen a bill that doesn't. I've certainly never had one that doesn't. It has a billing address and a physical address.
But then how would you bill somebody if they had two homes?
One billing address, two physical addresses, two different bills, two different accounts.
But if they pay with one card and that one card's billing address is one house, how would the billing address be for the other house?
Same billing address. I've had that. Two different physical addresses, two different accounts. You could have somebody paying multiple people's water bills, but the physical address for each account where the water service is being provided is different on every bill. It's just got the same billing address. I had my water bill sent to my office because that's where I did all my bill payment stuff. But the physical address was still my house where the water was being provided, not my office, as an example. So I would be surprised to find out that the water billing system only has one address on it, the billing address, and not the physical address. So if you had water problems, where do you tell them the problem is? At the billing address? That's the wrong house. If it's going to his, right? But so if that billing address, and it could be the billing address and the physical address are the friend's house, but in that case, you're presenting your friend's address with your name on it. That's possible. That's messed up. Jeez. So there are other ways to confirm and verify that you live in the district. The fact that in 2025 we're still using these rather archaic methods of determining physical address. But here's the point. Let's just fix all that. That's the whole point of enacting open enrollment, public school to public school transfer, so you don't have to worry about all that. All this is irrelevant, all this address verification stuff. Let's see. Bob says, thanks for discussing school choices. It is very important for Mississippi. Probably will cost Delbert Hoseman his job. Last year is the year all the Katrina babies graduated. My granddaughter was one of them. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, 2005. Prentiss County has 8 schools, 2 of those being Boonville and Baldwin City schools, too many for our population. Well, I would say maybe the number of schools is too many, but if there's a Boonville school district, a Baldwin school district, and Prentiss County, that would be the problem to me. That's probably more school districts than you need there in Prentiss County. I don't know what the population is, but certainly it's not so large that you need multiple districts. And then it does raise the question of, okay, well, would that allow...
Prentiss County has 25,135 people.
Yeah, not too many. So then that would that would also, again, bring up the question is, would the district in its governance and oversight of the schools under its purview there, would it reflect the values of the people who attend those schools, which it should, and that's always the risk of if you consolidate districts, and that's something that should be certainly looked at, that your power, I guess, and your influence is diluted if you've got one district, and it could be a situation in Prentiss County that Boonville, Baldwin, the county are just demographically different, that the residents of those areas just have a different set of values, and they want schools to reflect those, and that's who they elect to be on the school boards, and you would lose that if you had one school board to some extent. That's not a reason not to do it. I'm just pointing out that's where it gets a little thorny and a little complicated. Andy says it's okay. This next legislative session, we will get to hear how they are having conversations and making sausage and some drivel about a Mississippi miracle, and at most we'll get off some weak public-to-public version, and they'll shelve all discussions for another 5 years. Meanwhile, we'll fall further and further behind our neighboring states. Nothing will change until we vote the protectionists out of office. I hear you, Andy, and that's been my experience since I got involved in advocating for this in 2014. Let's see, something else. How many backup generators will there be at AWS? I don't know. It depends on the size and the capacity of the generators, but there are going to be lots of redundant power, let's just put it that way, that will be employed by these facilities because they're 7/24, 365 operations, and uptime is crucial, is essential. It's exciting watching all this unfold, no doubt about it, and seeing those buildings go vertical, as you heard Joey talking about, just absolutely incredible. Just to ride out there, and I've gotten out of my vehicle and you're just amazed. I mean, you're starstruck. And sort of breathtaking view of just this large expanse of land and all these machines moving around in these giant buildings to just think about and contemplate what is going on there and what that will look like when it's complete. Now, by the way, when you hear Joey talk about Jan 1, that's Amazon's coding structure, if you will. They use the closest airport and then a number to represent each site where they have an installation. So the fulfillment center that they have, that's the normal Amazon.com e-commerce part of their business. There is a giant fulfillment center out there at the same site. One side of the road is that and some other distribution facilities of other companies, and the other side of the road are all the buildings for the AWS project. But the Jan 1 is Jackson International Airport's designation. Number 1, that's the first site. That's what he's talking about there, and that's a big fulfillment center. And it's got over 2,000 employees there every day that are pumping stuff out. And that's an amazing facility. I think it's 750,000 square feet, if I'm not mistaken. So these buildings are 250,000 apiece. Looks like they're going to end up building 12 of those buildings on the Canton site and 4 the Ridgeland site, what Joey referred to as the Costas property. That's the plan at this point. So 16, they're 250,000 apiece. You can do the math. That's 4 million square feet of data center, which is incredible. Something else we should point out and that's notable about Amazon is they're striving to cool. A lot of cooling involved with all the heat being dissipated by this IT infrastructure. So you got to cool that stuff. You got to keep the inside the facilities cool, all kinds of specialized HVAC to do that, but using water.
That's why your computer starts making that whirring noise when you've been using it for a while.
That's right. It's having a bit of a heat meltdown.
That fan kicked in.
But they're using recycled water. And that's something that they set out to do. They wanted to make all of their water use recycled. So they're using wastewater, essentially, cleaning that wastewater, using that to cool. And I read an article this morning. They're up to 53% of all the water they use in all their facilities across the country. It's all wastewater, recycled. They're striving for 100%. They say they're way ahead, like 5 years ahead of schedule, on achieving that ultimate goal right now. So hats off to them. And their goal is we don't want to cause any problems for the water supply in the communities we serve. We want the communities to thrive, and, of course, they need water for that. So they're actually doing the communities a favor by recycling the wastewater into cooling the insides of the data centers. Pretty neat. Well, let's see here. Crosby Simmons says, in Vernon says, being an Army veteran, please mention it's our 250th anniversary. Yeah, that's right. Big celebration scheduled.
In a couple of days.
Yeah, in a couple of days. This weekend, right? This Saturday,
14th, yeah.
The president's having a big celebration for the Army's 250th birthday. Really cool. On the C Spire text line, my sister had to lease a place in Mize for her daughter to go to school there instead of her hometown, and they would supposedly check the residents sometimes, according to here. Yeah, Rhino hit the nail on the head. It's not my problem. I just think you're going to see some are going to do it with more fervor and more focus, and they're going to enforce that. And so to the folks out there that say you don't know what you're talking about, Gerard, this is happening every day, I get it. I'm just telling you what the rules are. I'm not saying the rules are being followed to a T and perfectly, but I am saying let's just change the law so we don't have to mess with this anymore. I can't make that any more clear. Now, that still would mean you've got to apply for a transfer, but it won't be based on that. It would be based on capacity and not all your address checking and stuff. Coming right back with the final segment.
For a flipping good time, headlines breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
So I need to continue. I forgot, and it's my apologies to Lori and Gauthier, who was telling us about when she had kids in Rankin County, how strict they were on making sure that folks truly did have meet the residency requirement to attend Rankin County schools. Goes on to say that she had a lady that allowed someone to have guardianship over her daughter so she could go to a Rankin County school. That seems a bit extreme. I'm not doubting that sort of stuff happens. And again, I'm advocating for changing law so we don't have to go through all these gyrations and exercises just to get to a school of your choice.
But that takes power away from the little fiefdoms of all these school districts and their little kings sitting in the superintendent's chair.
I agree. I'll just say this. For a state that holds itself up is one that supports markets, free market principles, free enterprise, which is an essential element of conservatism, we sure do have a lot of protectionist laws, don't we?
Welcome to the rock and the hard place of Mississippi politics.
It's
conservative thought meets aversion to change.
No doubt. Whether it's education, alcohol, health care.
Mobile sports betting.
Right. But vehicles, I think I covered them all. I'm sure there's more. But, yeah, we believe in that freedom. We believe in free
Just don't
market.
go changing too much.
Exactly.
It makes me iffy.
Well, I want to see it change. That's all. Let's see here. Also on the C Spire text line, had something I wanted to get to, and that was a person that said, that we need to lift up from being dead last, but there was something else. Oh, it was property value. That's the argument you hear a lot from school choice opponents, right? We can't do this because we can't do school choice because it would cause a decline in property values, except that hasn't been the case. Florida,
because they're not. Like if a student from a poorer performing school district moving to a better performing school district is not up and moving next door to you.
Right.
So what does property value have anything to do with it?
Well, the argument I've heard from the folks that like to use that as a reason to oppose school choice is that you would bring in poor-performing students, and that would cause the performance of the school overall, its grading, to decrease, and that would have a negative impact on the property values in the district. And I contend that the vast majority of students that would be interested in transferring and families are the very ones you want in school that are going to perform well. It's also, I think, likely the case, I don't have the data in front of me, that those high-performing schools pretty much brimming at capacity right now. It's not like they could just accept an overwhelming number of new students.
Not that there would be to begin with.
Right. And exactly. And the reason is because they've got good schools. So people move there and live there and invest in the schools, and they're performing well, and so they're at capacity. And so this idea that, they're going to ruin the schools is it's nonsense. I don't buy it, and that's going to cause a decrease in property values. If you look at the other states that have adopted school choice, that has not been the case. You think the property values have gone down in Florida? Are you kidding me? Quite the opposite. And I read the other day like 70% of the students in Florida are in some sort of choice because they have universal school choice, public to public, public to private, homeschool, microschools, charter schools. They got all the above. They got universal school choice. And it certainly hasn't caused a problem for their property values. That's just nonsense.
Unless they're just chuffed that they had to pay through the nose for a quote-unquote good school district, which at that point you should be angry with your realtor and realty in general.
Yeah. I agree.
That was just a whole category of ways to increase their cut that they added about 50 years ago.
Yep. 100% agree with too many districts. We live in Gautier, Jackson County as Jackson County District, Moss Point District, Ocean Springs District, Moss Point District. I think that was twice. But, they got to live there. I got it. Seems like a lot of excess and redundant overhead admin costs. Yeah, man. Pascagoula, Gautier District, set of 2 Moss Points. Again, with the 142 districts we have, 82 counties, yeah, absolutely. We are a prime candidate for some consolidation. The fact that we have 142 districts with 82 counties in a very small population, relatively speaking, at a minimum, we got to explore this and start modeling this. There was an effort to do that this past year, and it got kiboshed in the legislature, in the House in particular. What is the big project south of Satartia on Highway 3? Data center? I can't say too much about it, but it's not. It's an energy-related project. I can just tell you that. It is, to some extent, being driven by the data center investments being made in the state. But that specific project is an energy-related project. More on that as it becomes public. Out of here today, back with you tomorrow. Stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.